Do you have any USB ports?
That works too. Put that as a desk.
Don't use spare USB port.
No?
Okay, we're ready.
That's one more on that.
Is it?
I call this regular meeting of Council Town of Oliver, Monday, March 23rd, to order. Are there any late items to add to the agenda?
No, there are no late items.
Get a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. Councillor Mattis, seconded. Councillor Machial. I'll ask the question, is anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. Next item is the rise and report. And I'm reporting that at the closed meeting on March 23rd, 2020, Council ratified the 2020-2023 QP agreement, which provides an increase of 9.5% over the 4-year term. Adoption of prior minutes. First item is adoption of March 9th, 2020 regular open council meeting minutes. Motion to adopt those minutes. Councillor Mattis, seconded. Councillor Machial. I'll ask the question, is anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Moving to committee reports, March 9th, 2020 committee of the whole meeting minutes for receipt. A motion to adopt the minutes. Mattis.
No, that's gotta be applied.
Oh, that's right. I need a motion from one of the online councillors.
I move.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will ask the question, is anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Moving to water matters. Item 1, purchase of Vactor truck, Public Works. The CFO's report is attached, and I will ask the CFO to provide some information.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the end of our 2020 to 2024 financial plan, our capital financial plan, at that time, when we concluded our budget deliberations, there was still an allocated amount of approximately $160,000 of capital funds that have yet to be committed, as well as we didn't have committed any of our second phase, or they doubled up the 2019 gas tax funds, and that was about $260,000. So that left us approximately about $420,000 of monies that we could commit to various projects for the 2020 capital budget. At that time, Council requested that perhaps we come back and discuss the Vactor truck at that once we had some further information as to costs, also as to what this truck would be used for, etc. And as we started to put this together, myself and the Director of Operations, then we started to investigate, and I was looking into the capital budget and moving some of our funding around. And the best solution that we could come up with at that point in time was to, because the Vactor truck supports all of our public works operations, meaning water, sewer, and public works, that it should be funded by all 3 funds. And so therefore we thought 50% would be a reasonable amount coming from the general fund budget, 25% from water, 25% from sewer, to make up the total project of approximately, the truck would be approximately $510,000 plus the provincial sales tax. It makes it about $525,000. That is why the recommendation that is struck details that. What that will still allow us to do at the end of this is we're still going to have approximately $100,000 of community of gas tax funds remaining that can be utilized for something that is applicable with the gas tax grant. I know one of the things that came out of the budget discussion, or very quickly thereafter, was some with transit shelter. There could be some other application of that as well. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I'll certainly be willing to answer any questions, and Director of Operations will as well. Thank you.
Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two questions. I believe that the gas tax funding was doubled last year. Did we allocate the second one, or did that just flow into reserve?
The second portion, that $260,000 just went into reserve at the end of the year. And during budget discussion, we still did not allocate that.
Okay, so that isn't in this report, but there's another 260.
No, that is in this
allocated.
report. That's why, but I'm alluding to the fact that I will now be using a portion of that $260,000 for the bridge projects.
So that's the
Specifically.
other 260?
Yes. There was the 2019 portion that was doubled. So we had like $520,000. Of the $520,000, we only spent $260,000. That went into reserve. You still are expected to receive a portion in 2020. That has been budgeted, that has been spent.
Okay, so one of them has been out.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question regarding the budget, and I don't recall, did we allocate money in this year's budget for Vactor? Did we put aside?
No, we did not. We talked about it. It was in our financial plan as a budget item for 2021. And then that's when we started to talk about it, because we said, well, geez, we've saved money in other places. Perhaps we could actually roll it into 2020. And that's when.
No, I'm not talking the Vac truck, but I'm talking Vac truck services. Like,
Oh,
if we don't buy this truck, did we budget $50,000 for services?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so there is another $50,000
In the operating
in the
side.
operating
Yes.
side that would,
Yes,
that also exists if we moved ahead with this.
that's true.
Okay, so if we didn't move ahead, then we are properly funded for
That's
Vac
correct.
services. Just one clarification on
Well, that leads me to what I was thinking, is there, if we do buy the Vactor truck, is there some operational savings that would, some budget that would come out of the operational budget?
There certainly could be. The director of operations would have to review that, because we do use, certainly in water and sewer, it's that company, I don't want to name them by name here, but where we spend around $40,000-$50,000 annually. Those type of savings would, but we wouldn't actually get this vehicle probably till September, October, Sean?
Yeah, it really depends. We have, we could get it a little bit sooner if we get, a used one that they were showing other municipalities. Then you may be able to get it within 2 months.
CEO?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would look at that funding that we've already put into the general budget towards, there's gonna have to be some operation done of the machine, so you have to put somebody on that machine. So some of those costs would be used towards that, and upkeep, et cetera, of that $40,000 that are in the budget. So that should be taken into consideration as well, that it could possibly be used towards that.
Councillor Machial?
The CAO just, I was gonna make that exact point. I mean, we're gonna have to have somebody on this truck, and there's gonna be maintenance, so I don't think that's full savings. I know when we first discussed this, way back, I don't know, maybe a month ago or whatever, I was quite apprehensive about spending that kind of money and going into debt to purchase that. I think I'm even more apprehensive now, because we don't really know what's gonna happen going forward here. I think that might be the wrong time to do this. I think that, and if we were going to do it, I wouldn't be in favor of contributing 25% from water. I think what we should do is borrow the money. If the town wants to do that, borrow the money, come up with a call-out rate, so that whatever department uses the truck, that amount is in charge to that department, and we can easily do that. And that's how we would pay for the truck, and based on that call-out rate plus a replacement rate. I think that's what we do with our existing equipment. There's whatever utility is using it, then that charge goes to it, whether it's a pickup or whether it's the truck, and that's how we should approach this. Even then, I just don't think this is the right time. That's my opinion on it. Even borrowing that money is in my mind a little. I personally think that what's happening right now is going to cause interest rates to go up a few years from now, because they're throwing so much money at this But this problem we've got happening right in our face immediately, and the only way to slow things down later on will be to raise rates. So I mentioned that earlier, that I'm very nervous about the possibility of how much we're having to borrow. And I think last time we discussed even the siphon repair, I mentioned that I thought it's a lot of money, it's really high risk. So I think going more into debt this time would not be something that I'd like to see do. But if we are gonna buy it, then that would be the proper approach, in my view anyway, would be to do it that way. But I'm not in favor of doing it this time.
Councillor Mass.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple more questions through. If we do an equipment loan to move ahead with this, does that impact our total borrowing envelope? Or is this separate from that envelope because it's backed by equipment?
If you're using, are you referring to borrowing money from the Municipal Finance Authority?
Yes.
Then yes, that does affect your debt capacity.
That's the total envelope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead on your second question, please.
The second question was, is there ever a circumstance in your memory through the Director of Public Works or the CFO and the records that you've looked at, has there ever been a circumstance where the water fund or sewer fund has been asked to purchase a capital item for general use in the past? I know that they buy capital items for water and for sewer that are used exclusively for them. Has there ever been a situation where we have done this before, where we've asked them to contribute?
I can answer it from my own history, and then Sean can. Definitely, when you're dealing with utilities, for example, I'll use electric utilities specifically, absolutely. Now, one thing I want to clarify with how the equipment replacement reserve works and what Councillor Machial was referring to, the equipment rates. You're absolutely right. We do charge that back, and we charge out the fuel, the maintenance, insurance, and labor, and you get an equipment rate that gets charged to the job. That's for a replacement vehicle. That is not for a new vehicle. A new vehicle is brand new. It has to be funded out of somewhere. So therefore, when we're actually funding a replacement, absolutely, it's coming out of reserve. That's how the reserve is created. It's not created for brand new vehicles, right? That's what in the equipment replacement reserve, the key word is replacement. So when you get a new vehicle, you're always looking at where can you fund it from? Who's going to use that vehicle? If it's used strictly for roads, streets, curbs, gutters, tree planting, absolutely, general fund. But when it's used primarily, and might even be more than 50% for water and sewer, then you've got to look at different ways to fund it. And which is the proper, and we've been doing a very good job, and I know everyone, well, you want to fund it there, you want to fund it water, you want to fund it sewer. This is exactly following the same principle.
Councillor Michelle.
You can still come up with that calculation, saying, it doesn't matter, if you borrow that if you borrow $500,000, you can come up with that calculation. I mean, you can still come up with a charge out rate for that piece of equipment. It'll probably be, because you'll have to also have a replacement cost built into that, and that'll be that charge. Whether it's $100, $200 an hour, whatever it gets charged at.
So what you're saying then is instead of charging it, we're going to double charge it for that first 10 years of operation of that vehicle, of the Vactor truck, is what you're telling me.
Well, either way, you're going to pay.
Double or 1.5 or 1.25, whatever
Yeah.
the number calculates out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a way to do it. I've never seen it done that way, but it's a way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the utility that does use it pays for it.
I just wanted to add, going back a couple of questions, that we won't see as much of the savings this year because we've already got that contractor doing work for us right now for the next 2-3 more weeks possibly. Well, next 2 weeks. So yeah, we won't see that savings as much this year, but then moving forward next year, and we would see more of the savings.
Councillor Sidhu, any questions, comments?
I just have a few questions here. One on page 4, where it's the general operating funds and over for capital. In 2022 and 2023, it seems like we're running into some pretty big variances compared to our budget. Are those related to the Gallagher Lake placement at all, or are these variances due to other operations?
These particular variances that are in my staff report, these are just general capital, they're not the water sector.
Okay. And my second question was that if we were to go ahead and buy this truck, what our utilization, like on the very next page, it tells you our total hours of utilization. Would we be able to utilize this truck for more operations, or do we need it for more operations, or are we pretty much getting what we need out of where we're contracting through right now?
We have a list of things that the Vactor truck can do and for our operations, so that's what we would probably we'd be saving some of that money hiring a contractor to do those same services, which generally is around $45,000 to $50,000 a year on average.
$250 an hour.
Yeah, so we would use it on the water side, we'd use it on the sewer side definitely, and even general budget. It even replaces using the backhoe as much, especially when we're doing excavations in tight areas and around a lot of other utilities, so.
Thank you.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you. Can I just start by asking again that everybody talks in turn? It just, when it got a little bit back and forth there for a while, it's really hard to hear when more than one person speaks at once, which is completely agree. So my understanding would be that when we had this discussion that we're comfortable in favor of purchasing not the same over there. And I still think that in the long run we should own it. That would be of a benefit to us as a municipality. But I agree with Councillor Machial that I don't know if right now is the right time given what's going on for a couple of different reasons. I think that being cautious is, as a municipality, is probably our best way to go for now. I don't Sean just said that the contractor that we normally use has already been contracted, so we wouldn't be saving that much this year, which is one of my concerns. I wouldn't want to be taking money out of the local economy right now and away from a local contractor that we regularly use, and somebody who might be depending on that to go out and purchase our own machinery. So it's good to know that that wouldn't happen regardless, but I do think that if we proceed cautiously right now, conceivably, I guess, if we're in good shape in the fall, let's say, there's no reason we couldn't revisit this conversation then and potentially, make the purchase out of this year's budget then, knowing that we're in good shape and have the machinery ready for the spring so that next year we do see the full savings. So those would be my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Similar to Councillor Ventimiglia, but first of all, a question to the Director of Finance. When you finance something through the Municipal Finance Authority, say we ordered the truck right away, of course we wouldn't have to make any payments until it was delivered in September, October, or November. But can you decide that and pay off the loan at any time without penalty, or is there some sort of penalty along the way?
Through the chair to Director Schwarzenberger, I honestly did not look into that. Knowing the way this loan is structured, I believe we probably could pay it off, but I'd have to look into that to be sure.
Because I think that's possibly a better way to go, would be to order the truck, start and use it through the finance authority, and then a year from now when things are in much better place, we could just pay off the truck with the money that's already there that we have and continue along. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, a few comments. First of all, I would not be in favor of going for the Vactor truck. I think with the debt load that we're already going to be carrying for the site, but I don't think it makes sense for us to add to that. And right now, just considering current events, I don't think it's the right time for this purchase. I think it's time to tighten up financially and look at this and again, in the fall at the earliest or during the next budget cycle. Those are my comments.
Well, my comments would be, I'm in favor of getting a Vactor truck. I think it's a valuable piece of machinery, and it's gonna make us, give the operations side of of the business that we do, it's gonna help out with a lot of work in that area. But with the current state of affairs, I do have to say that I think waiting is probably more prudent. This capital money, I think we should keep sort of unallocated, allocated toward a Vactor truck, but not officially or sort of 100% allocated, and it'll give us some flexibility to deal with some of the things that we can't even think about that may come down the road in the next couple of months. And as Councillor Ventimiglia said, we can revisit this later in the year. Those would be my comments. I do think it's a piece of equipment that we need to get for the town, but and if it wasn't for the COVID going on right now, I would be all for it. But I think taking a step back and just giving ourselves some flexibility to deal with, be able to have the financial resources to deal with what might come down the road, I think is a prudent move at this point in time.
May I ask one more question? Second.
Yeah. Yes?
Would that be something, I would like to see this come back to us in the fall so that we can just kind of really quickly revisit and see where we're at that point. But the question is, would that be something that we could do if we are in good shape and we still have the capital on hand to be used? Would we be able to use it out of this year's budget and like pre-order so that we have the machinery in the spring?
Through the chair, the answer to your question is Doug Leahy. The answer is yes, you could certainly do that. We could amend the budget at that time. The money is sitting, as the mayor has mentioned, is unallocated right now. We have the gas tax money in reserve. We also have not spent our full 9% allocation. That's what the $160,000 was. So that will sit there until council chooses to do something different with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to make the motion that council defer purchase of the Vactor truck until later this year to reconsider.
Second by Councillor Machial. Any further comments? Questions, council online? Hearing none, I will ask the question, is there anyone not in favor of the motion? Motion passes. Moving to item 2, Flume 3 Structural Remediation Tender. I'll pass it over to the Director of Operations.
Thank you, Your Worship. We recently tendered the Flume 3 Structural Remediation Project, and what we found out is that we had 3 bids that were over budget, what our budget was, and a couple of those reasons had to do with safety more than anything. So the installation was going to take a little longer than what we anticipated. Same with our engineering group, CIMA, out of Kelowna. They realized afterwards that we should have had a bit more contingency in there for the safety aspect of it. And then, but fabrication of the steel and products also came in higher than originally anticipated. So those were two major factors why everyone was higher than we anticipated. We had our lowest bid was Grayback Construction, which came in at just over $158,000, and we actually sat down with Grayback too, because they were the only ones that were even close to our range, and themselves, after looking at the project again, there wasn't anything that they could do on their end to tweak or lower the costs, if anything. It sounded like if we were re-tendering, it'd probably go higher. So it's so that's where we're at a conundrum right now, whether we can sit on this one, re-tender it at a later time, or if we follow through and award them the project. They can do work while there is water in the flume. They just do certain pieces at a time, where they add the fabrication, do the drilling. They don't pre-drill everything. They work on a piece, 1 or 2 pieces at a time, and do what they need to do. They know what they need to do. Greyback's well equipped and has a good history of working on big projects, and so basically I've given council a few options. Award Flume 3 Structural Remediation Project to Greyback Construction at the cost of $158,240, and using reserves to cover an estimated shortfall of $51,000. Some of that may be in more of the engineering side as well. Number 2 would be properly budget and re-tender the project in early 2021, or number 3 would be re-tender the project at a later date in 2020 for November construction. Staff feel that awarding the contract Flume 3, even though that is a little bit higher than what we anticipated, may be our best bet, just from the bids that we already received and after consultation with Greyback. Were there any questions?
Councillor Machial.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Sean. Remind me, because I jogged my memory. Okay, we're doing this not because it's structurally not sound, it's because we're transferring for earthquake protection?
Well, we had a seismic structural assessment a couple of years ago, and it was observed that it was during a decent seismic event that it would fail, that structure would fail. There was no doubt about it in their mind.
But there's no danger, I mean, right now, without a seismic event, it's
No,
not, there's
they
issues.
said it's in good condition.
Okay,
Yeah, they said overall the structure's in good condition, but it's just to beef up the structure, and then you shouldn't have to look back at it for many decades, right? It should be good.
I did have one question, and it was just on the report from CIMA. Their comments I found a bit confusing, and they were saying we consider the preparation will require a higher level of detail from the contractor if awarded, and possibly more effort from the town of Oliver and partners to ensure delivery on time and on budget. So is there any quantity on the risk, like on time, on budget? Are we, if we award this and move forward with it,
No,
what's our risk of more financial impact?
Well, when we sat down with CIMA and I asked for a new recommendation, because we met after they wrote this original one, and we said we need more information. We need to talk to the contractor, because I don't like coming to council when we're not within our budget. So we're asking for an additional $51,000 and maybe a little bit more on there, just because I think the duration of the project may take a little bit longer, so we might need them to be there to spot check a bit more. But that's not a significant cost. What else was there? The safety factor was a big one. All the companies that bid on it, really, it was how to set up on the slopes properly, and the time that you move and do it in sections. It takes time to take down and put up proper scaffolding, proper safety lines. They have to assess the safety lines that we have on the structure itself and come up with safety procedures for that. And so there's, I don't know if I answered your question properly.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence that this project will be delivered safely and on budget?
within the additional money. I think our confidence would be, I'd say a good 8 or 9 would be within budget if we were to add that. Because we did sit down with Greenback and we said, you know, this is as high as we can go. You know, we got to work within this budget. They said they'll make it work. It's not a complicated as far as what they need to do for work. It's a little bit time consuming and making sure everybody's safe to do the job.
Mhm.
That's the mitigating factor.
Councillor Matz.
Are there any warranties on how large an earthquake this will withstand?
I cannot recall the seismic event calculation, but yeah, I mean the structure's been there for many decades. You know, if we had to push it off, again, it would be the end of the world. But if something were to happen, or we do it now, because there has been discussion already. You know, and I already know there's some projects that aren't going to get done this year. It's just two ways around it, because it seems like with the COVID-19, some of these contractors are even going to get have to scale back significant. But if this project was to go through, we gave them the go-ahead, we still, as long as it's done in this calendar year, they have time to do it.
No, thank you for that. I do think we need to move forward with this. We are investing millions of dollars in the canal going around Gallagher Lake, and to leave a weak spot sitting there for an event that may or may not happen just seems like it would be prudent to get it done, because if we ever had something happen, it would be like, why did you not address any serious concern like that? I would ask, is there anyone online with a question, comment? Councillor Sidhu? Hello?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Just one question through to Sean. If we were to properly budget and retender the project in early 2021, do you think it would have a big financial impact compared to the 158 that we're going to be spending now?
My belief is once a lot of this COVID-19 starts decreasing and people start getting back to normal business, you're going to have a mad rush of everybody trying to get everything done. I think it'd be prudent for the town to keep a few things going in our pocket and guaranteed prices and get those done now, because I can see the costs increasing.
Okay.
And they've already hinted at that too.
Thank you, that's all my comments.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Nothing for me.
Councillor Schwarzenberger?
I'm good, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Grice?
Nothing other than just to echo what the mayor said. I think that if we're putting this kind of investment into the site, then it doesn't make sense to leave a weak link in the system. So I'd be in favor of going ahead with the project. Thank you.
Councillor Matz?
Seeing as this is an amendment to the budget, if it doesn't get 100% approval, would it have to go to Victoria?
No.
CEO?
Thank you, Worship. It does not have to go to it's just the water rates that go to the province when we do our bylaw, not any capital projects.
Our budget goes to,
No.
okay.
No, I don't, just the last comment I would make was, it's kind of like what Sean said, that's why I asked the question. And it's in good shape, it's been there for decades, and it's probably gonna stay there for decades, but, I guess you take your choice. We're gonna have an earthquake and knock it down, or it might still come down even with an earthquake, even with the fixing. So I mean, it's one of those things. We're spending an awful lot of money at Gallagher Lake. Maybe we had budgeted 100,000 or 100 and whatever it was. So I think that it might be appropriate to go ahead with this project. So I would move it. Okay, Councillor Ward, the Flume 3 Structural remediation project to Grayback Construction at a cost of $158,240 using reserves to cover an estimated shortfall of $51,000. And I'll move that.
Second.
Second, Councillor Evans. Any further comment from council? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the recommendation? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Item 3, 2020 Council Policy Review. I'll refer to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a continuation of our 2020 Council Policy Review report from the initial selection of 10 policies that I brought to the last Committee of the Whole meeting. 7 are attached for review that we didn't get to. So with that in mind, I'll just move down to the spreadsheet. The first policy is the asset management policy. That policy was adopted by Council February 2017. Quick cursory review of the policy. I don't see any changes that I would recommend, but I am willing to take any suggestions that Council have, and the CFO and the Director of Operations would probably be better to answer these questions than myself.
Okay. I guess the first one on the list is the infrastructure asset management policy. Does anyone have any comments or questions or suggestions for an update on that particular policy? No? Okay. Let's go, hearing none, we'll move to the second item on the list, which is the Bandai Tree Council policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. This policy is really a resolution that was just put a title on it, Council policy. So my suggestion would be, if Council wishes to keep this policy, I would actually put it into a policy format and maybe determine if there's other more sister city related items or topics that Council has over the years, where we've had a long term with the sister cities, and put them all together. But I'll take any comments that I have from Council.
Councillor Mattis.
My comment on this one some time ago, I'd written it down, was that the council policy titled Bandai Tree be amalgamated by staff with the council policy titled Commemorative Recognition in Outdoor Spaces. We actually have a policy called Commemorative. And it's a fairly new policy.
Mm-hmm.
This could be one line inside of that policy. And then some.
I can bring that back.
Yeah, I like that suggestion. Any other comments, council, online? Hearing none, we'll go to the council policy bylaw enforcement complaint management policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. On my spreadsheet, I do have a comment in regards to this bylaw enforcement complaint policy. I'm recommending that it be deferred back to the department, the Director of Development Services, at this time, because Council has changed the delivery of bylaw enforcement in the town of Oliver. We still have complaint-based, but we're moving to more of a proactive service. So once the Director of Development Services hires his new bylaw enforcement supervisor, there would be opportunity for review. I don't know if the Director of Development Services had any comment with that regard.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo what Ms. Vakovich was saying, yeah, I recommend the bylaw supervisor looking over our policy. I think we've had a lot of good applicants so far. I think we'll get someone with experience that have worked around bylaw enforcement for a long time. So I think we can have them look at the bylaw. That could be something that they could start. I'm not sure by the time they get here, it'll probably be summer and we'll be sort of ramping up, but maybe in the fall this would be a project they can take on and bring some options for council to consider.
Thank you. I think I would agree on that. Does anyone have any comments on that, on the updating that policy? Hearing none, we'll go to the next one, which was the check signing policy, which was recently updated in October 15th, 2019.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The check signing policy is pretty much rewritten by the Chief Financial Officer back in October 15th, 2019. So I don't see any immediate changes that are required, but I would take any comments that Council has.
Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is that policy combined with that work done by the CFO sufficient to rescind the actual policy? That the notes would be contained in there? If we could get confirmation and maybe at our next meeting we could rescind the check signing policy because it's already been made.
Through the Worship, I would, what I'll do is I'll take a look at the other policy if it wasn't rescinded and review the provisions, and if it has been rescinded, that's good. I can report on that, and if not, then I can bring it forward for rescind.
Thank you. Any other comments, council? Questions? We'll move on to the next one, which was the Christmas office closure policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Christmas office closure council policy, that again is a resolution which I would suggest to put into policy format. It still is the practice of staff. Those provisions are followed each year for our Christmas closure. I can take any comments that council may have.
The only question I would have is just wondering why there's a reference to the recreational office in the town CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. In 1996, we were still looking after the parking lot, and we had the contract to look after it.
Okey-doke.
Question, do you need resolutions for direction on these, or you'll bring them back?
Thank you. Through the Worship, I'll just bring them back. And through your Worship, the next policy is a somewhat new policy, the Oliver Volunteer Fire Department Code of Conduct, which was brought into play by Council May 14th, 2018. Again, I don't see any immediate changes to the policy, but I will take any comments that you have.
Any comments from councillors online? Okay, I think the last one is the council policy code of conduct.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the last policy of the 10. Again, this policy is somewhat new, a little bit older. November 14th, 2017, this policy was brought into place, the council code of conduct. A lot of the provisions were brought into play under the guidance of the Local Government Management Association. They were guiding municipalities across the province in code of conduct policies. I don't see any immediate changes unless you have some comments.
Any comments, council online? I would say we're done with policies.
Thank you,
for
Worship.
this meeting. Councillor Machial, anything to report?
No, Your Worship. It's on holidays. Luckily, we got back before the official quarantine, so we got back and we're safe. And just a crazy world we have right now. That's all. We won't comment over there.
Thank you. Councillor Sidhu, anything to report?
Nothing need to report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moving to development permit variance permits. Item 1, development permit with variances 231, 233, 237, and 239 Maple Avenue. I will pass this over to the Director of Development Services, whose report is attached.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is for a development permit with variances for 231, 233, 237, and 239 Maple Avenue. So a bit of a background, in 2016, the subject property began being used as a metal storage container rental business as well as an on-site mini storage business. A development permit was applied for but not brought to council due to outstanding items not being addressed until more recently. A recent site visit revealed that rear and interior side yard setbacks were not being adhered to, thus the requirement for a development variance permit. The purpose of this report is to formalize the use of the property through the issuance of a development permit with variances. Approval of the variance would allow the applicant to place metal storage containers within the varied setbacks as required. So the property is located along Sawmill Road in the southeast corner of the town. The zoning is industrial, as well as the OCP is industrial. Some photos of the property, the council members online will be able to see this, so I'll just scan through them quickly. So these are street view, the north view, along with the street portion that'll be landscaped, the south view and the east view. So this is the map showing the proposed setbacks. So the yellow area would be the rear setbacks. Those are proposed to be varied to 0. And then the blue ones are the interior parcel lines. Those are proposed to be varied to 0. And then the line on the far east will adhere to the setback. So there's sort of two property lines that would have impacts on neighbors. One being the north property line. A letter of support was sent in from that owner, and then the one on the far east is adhering to the setback. So there would be no variance on that side. And that's actually right next to the recent development permit application that was brought to council a few months ago. So here's a site plan showing the proposed business. So right now they have metal storage containers throughout the site, all along the back property lines here, and then along the north property lines. On 237 and 239, it's more of they store the containers there and then they get moved out on site for people that are renting them. So those ones are moved quite often. On 231 and 233, those are the ones that are on site, like mini storage basically for metal storage containers. So those ones are sort of the more permanent ones. And those ones will adhere to the rear setbacks as along with the east side interior setback. Some of the existing landscaping, there are some flower beds along the front, and then a cedar fence with some landscaping, and the idea is that they'll do the other little portion along the road as well and put up a new cedar fence, which is shown here. It's hard to see, but it's just in this area in the top corner along 239 and 237. So just speaking about the setbacks, so regarding the rear setbacks, the rear parcel lines are adjacent to an empty crown parcel to the south, and below Oak Avenue there's quite a drop there. So and that's to the west, so there's no residences really in close proximity to the rear parcel lines. The metal storage containers are often moved and do not remain in the setbacks for an extended period of time. They're only permitted to be stacked too high, which is much lower than the 15 meters that could be built in this zone. And then speaking to the interior side parcel lines, since the applicant owns all 4 of the parcels, approval of this side yard variances won't really have any impact. The farthest east interior parcel line, as I mentioned, adjacent to 225, will maintain a 4-meter setback, and a letter of support has been submitted from the owner to the north that would be impacted the most. Regarding the development permit, the metal storage containers are set back 6 meters from the front with landscaping, creating an aesthetically pleasing connection to the street. The developer will be constructing an attractive cedar fence along the front property line to match the existing work that's been done. And the length of time that these properties will be used for this purpose is unknown, but at the time when a more permanent building is proposed, an additional development permit will be required with detailed building elevations and a more robust landscape plan. The options for council is that they may choose to support the recommendation, they may choose not to support it, or they may choose to refer it back to staff. And the staff recommendation is that council approve development permit with variances number 2019-37, and that staff be directed to issue the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we don't have a copy of the development permit in front of us. We only have this portion of it, but for me, there's a couple of things about the site that are a concern. I raised them briefly with the director this afternoon. Didn't really get clear answers, and my concern is that the storage containers have been turned into offices and a mini storage. And I recognize that storage containers can be used, or these containers can be used for storage, but I don't know that we should be, or that we have provision for them to be used as a mini storage business for other people. This would, to my mind, make them buildings, and if they're buildings, then they need to be on footings and foundations. They need to be proper buildings, and that goes for both the office and the mini storage operation. I'm concerned that if we allow this, or that we don't make some provision within this, or have some written assurance of when and how this would be remedied, that we just can't be waiting for it to happen sometime in the future. That we're setting a scary precedent. Would this then allow someone to have a container converted into or two containers converted into a home and dropped on a property without a foundation? Would it allow anyone in town to set up a business within converted containers? To me, it's a real concern that we're allowing it to happen on this property. I don't know that this is the right opportunity for us to fix the problem, but at this point for me, I think it should be referred back to staff for more information about how these problems will be resolved before we provide variances. Because if we vote in favor and say yes to the variances, then the rest of it just happens, and we have no further control over it. And that to me is a real concern.
Councillor Ventimiglia, do you have any comments, questions?
Councillor Madison's comments just gave me something to think about, not something that I thought about before. I thought that we were all under the understanding that this is a mini storage business. I mean, it's in the report, and as mentioned, it has been for quite some time. So I honestly hadn't given thought to the storage containers being on foundations or anything like that, and I think I need a little more time to actually process what that means. When I originally read through the court report, I was honestly a bit hesitant about the parcel and setback reductions, and so I read the portion of the staff report that does note that the proposed variances are for metal storage containers only, and that the property owner would not be able to construct any other structure within the various setbacks. So that was reassuring, and I was in favor. However, just during Councillor Madison's comments, I couldn't on a little bit more into what others have to say.
Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the Director of Development Services, I'm a little unclear. The two interior or three interior lines that, separate the four lots, that's not problematic to me. I'm just uncertain of, I thought setbacks were for permanent structures. If you have a container that's just sitting on the ground, even if it's right up against the back fence, and it's obviously not a permanent structure, if it's just sitting there, why does that need to be addressed with changing the setback? And my other concern is that, this is a specialized business, but if we're changing setbacks for this business to zero on three sides, basically, it kind of sets a precedent for everybody else in the area. And then all of a sudden we've got, as this area finishes its development, we got a whole bunch of places that are zero setbacks everywhere. And yes, this one, I still don't understand why a container can't sit up against the fence, but the setback has to be adjusted. So perhaps you could start with that for me.
Director?
Sure, thank you, Worship. So in the general regulations for metal storage containers, it says that metal storage containers shall be cited in accordance with the regulations for the siting of accessory buildings or structures. So it does need to be cited as if it is an accessory building, so that's the reason for the setbacks.
Okay?
What was your other question? Sorry, the second part of the question?
You know, it was more a comment about setting a precedent for creating this, giving this proponent basically a zero setback on 3 sides of his property, and that precedent being for others who buy in that area and want to maximize their usage. Now, when you say, okay, so it has to be the container is considered the same as an auxiliary building. How do you have to count how do you maintain that they don't go over their 60% land coverage? Maybe they're not there now, but they could be there in the future. And how do you do that when you're counting? Do you have to count containers, or it just seems like a lot?
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's a fair comment. It would be difficult to track them for the lot coverage. And I could also add to that, if there's a shed that's under 10 meters squared, that's when it can be right up to the property line. But a metal storage container would have to follow the setbacks.
I see. Well, again, I guess I'm more worried about the precedent than anything else, but I'll leave it to the other councillors to have their say as well.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Worship. Through to the Director of Development Services. So is the business as it is now allowed in the M1 zone? Because the way I'm looking at this, it seems like they're just looking for permission to continue doing what they're already doing anyways, and then adding some landscaping.
Sorry, yeah, just to add, a metal or a self-storage business is permitted in that zone, as well as outdoor storage, which outdoor storage would be sort of half of what they're doing, and then the self-storage being the other half. And I should add that the definition of self-storage does not exclude metal storage containers, so that's what they'd be considered. It could fall under that.
So am I right to say then that it's just going to be business as usual, but they're looking for permission now, I guess, for the setbacks? Like I don't see, like it seems like they've already got this sort of business going.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they're essentially just wanting to continue the use. They're, like I mentioned in the, when I was speaking about the application, giving the introduction, the development permit side of it was outstanding since 2016. That's what we've been waiting on. But through the process, since me sort of taking over this position and looking at it, I realized that the parcel lines also weren't really being followed. So that's why it's in conjunction with this application. But yes, they are just asking to continue the use and to legalize it and formalize it.
So just so I can sort of fully understand the nature of the business, then it makes sense to say that it's more or less a mini storage, that people are filling new units and then they're leaving them there, so they get moved around, and I don't know if I'm trying to understand what they're doing here.
Yeah, so there's sort of two parts to it. There's the west half of it on 237 and 239, which is just simply outdoor storage. So it's the storage of all the metal storage containers. They get moved around, they get brought to people's houses, they come back. And then the east half on 231 and 233 is more of the, well, I guess you could use the word permanent, like self-storage, like mini lockers, right? Where people come there, there's a gate, they enter the code and go through the gate, and then they store their stuff there, and then move on, and not store the containers at their house.
So I guess then my final comment would be, I personally feel okay with the variance for the setback, because these are all, none of these are permanent structures, and if it is, as you said, it would have to come back to us if somebody was to develop this in the future with permanent structures to relook at the setbacks again, then I think I would be okay with it. That's in my comments.
That's your comment. I just have a couple questions, comments. I think the mini storage part, or the storage part in the storage containers, seemingly organized, and you're looking at 230 and 231. I don't think I have as much of an issue with that. Councillor Mattis did bring up an interesting point about the office, and I know that I did build a bunkhouse a couple years ago where there's a company in Kelowna that takes storage containers and converts them into offices or bunkhouses, so to speak, or sleep quarters for camps and different things like that. And at that time I was looking at like a Britco trailer, but we ended up going with a storage container. But the storage container was modified to the building code and electrical code and those types of things. It came with several certifications, and even though it didn't sit on a foundation, it still was a certified container that was able to apply for a building permit. And I'm just wondering about the office in here. That sort of raises a red flag for me on how that was modified. Is it a storage container that somebody's just got a table in and a computer and it hasn't really been modified? Is it connected to sewer or septic? Those types of things gives me some pause for questions.
I should add that the applicants are aware that a building permit is required for the office component of it because it's occupied. But I spoke with obviously our building inspector's away right now, but I spoke with a building inspector from a different municipality today. And what he advised is that metal storage containers are sort of in the gray area of the building code, and that they don't really need a permit if they're just used for storage because they're mobile, they're non-combustible, they're sort of pre-built and engineered. The tricky part is when they become occupied. That's when a building permit should be required. So they have been made aware that a building permit is required. From my understanding, it is connected to services. So I'm not sure how that was done, but that's definitely something that they will have to do to come in and get a building permit for that. I had another thought too. Was just maybe regards to the possibility of a single family home becoming or someone living in them. And I think the only thing I could say to that is the definition of single family home would not include metal storage containers. It speaks to what can be used as a dwelling, and a metal storage container would not be listed in there. The office component is a bit trickier though. That's not really prohibited, so perhaps the CEO could add some vital information as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to point out that we have, can everybody hear me? I did want to point out that we have provided a variance to an ATCO trailer at the gas building where they did not have to have it affixed to a permanent foundation. So there has been a variance given down in that area to a business, and they varied section 3.2.4 of the zoning bylaw. So that has been done in the past.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. One last question. If we were to grant this variance, would this variance go with the property? And therefore, any permanent structures that are built in the future on this property would be able to be built according to this variance?
No, so the idea is in the permit I would attach the site plan. So you'd attach this site plan as part of the permit. So in that basically they're only allowed, it could only be for metal storage containers. And the wording of the permit also in the report says for metal storage containers. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, as long as they can't use the variance to build a permanent structure.
No, it would just be for metal storage containers, and like I said, it would be listed in the permit, and this plan would be attached to the permit. But I do also recognize, as to what Councillor Mattis had brought up in the CAO, there is a section in our zoning bylaw that should probably be looked at a bit, because it does say all buildings and structures must be affixed to permanent foundations, but then we do allow storage containers, right? We specifically permit them in the industrial zone, and that's sort of implied that those wouldn't have a permanent foundation, right? So it's definitely something that should be looked at. But I think we're okay in this case because we do permit metal storage containers. They're not asking for something else that doesn't have a permanent foundation, like a house without a permanent foundation, right? So I think it's definitely something I've written down to add to the housekeeping amendments.
So just to be clear, are we also saying that a building permit is required for the office structure?
Yep, it is required. Yep, they're aware of it.
It's not in place right now.
It's not in place from my understanding yet.
But we can make it part of the variance that it needs to be applied for, and
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe it has to be part of the variance. It's something that's required, so we would have our own enforcement measures if somebody, because technically as it stands now, they've built something without a building permit, right? So we could address it the proper means.
Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Mattis?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just asking online council if there was any other comments, questions. Councillor Mattis?
I was just going to make the motion that council approve the development variance permit, and that it be subject only to storage containers. Because I don't see that it's actually up there that way.
I'll second.
So the motion, I'd like that part to be in there where, and that it's applicable only to storage containers.
So we have a mover of a motion that council approve development permit with variances number 2019-037 applicable only to metal storage containers, and the staff be directed to issue the permit. Do I have a seconder online?
Yes, I seconded, sorry, I didn't hear me.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. We have a seconder. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, I will ask the question, is anybody not in favor of the motion? The motion passes. Moving to business, PackingHouse Lane Road upgrade options. I'll pass it over to the Director of Operations, whose report is attached.
You spray down the whole area. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, we had to move spots there. As council remembers, during general budget deliberations, we did have a project on there because of that new housing project going in on Airport Avenue. So this wasn't on our radar from previous years, but because this is happening, that we thought we should now refinish the roads on PackingHouse Lane and part of Airport Street as well. And we had a budget in there for $1,055,000, which is quite a bit. So council had asked staff to asked staff to revisit the current PackingHouse Lane Road and budget options, and one of the options was to include a lane closure for part of the road to make the intersection of Co-op Avenue, PackingHouse Lane, and the mall entrance safer. So we have done that. We've also, if council read the report, we had an option in there. I had a figure in there that just doing the work around the development and leaving that portion of the lane untouched and that intersection untouched too. So I'll just quickly go through and I wanted to bring it up for the ones who could see. So basically we have four options. If we go back to the original design, this is the section that the town would have to pay for, as well as this little section on airport, these two little sections on airport, just to make it look a little bit better. But the development itself would pay pay for everything up to the center line around the development in the first phase. And then I believe from further discussions before that it was asked that the town cover this last section on PackingHouse Lane and incorporate that into our costs. Am I correct? Okay. So town staff originally budgeted $1,055,000 for the major upgrades on PackingHouse Lane, Airport Street. I believe the funding was broken down to pay for it by, in the budget when we were originally discussing this, $268,000 was going to be gas tax, $125,000 DCCs, $300,000 was other, and $362,000 was taxes. So, and that would have covered the project. Now, I don't think it was agreed upon at that time what was the actual breakdown was going to be until the council had further information. The original design and pricing of the project for budgeting purposes incorporates option 1. So in the drawings that True gave to us, they gave us, if council could, they gave us 4 options of redoing PackingHouse Lane and that intersection, making that intersection a co-op and the mall entrance and PackingHouse Lane safer. So they did come up with some different options there. And I believe this was the option 1 was the original one put into the budget.
Just for the people on the phone, he's on page 5 of his report.
Yeah, sorry, I'm skipping back.
Looking at the first drawing in the.
Do you have any clarification on the 300,000 other?
I was going to ask Doug.
That was the contribution from the developer, was it not?
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I was going to ask you that. And so if we were just to, if I go back to the original drawing, if we weren't going to do one of those 4 options around PackingHouse Lane, close the lane, or do whatever we're going to do with it in the intersection, we'd save about $200,000. So we can knock about $200,000 off of the total cost of the project.
He's on page 8 of 14 right now.
Yeah, sorry, because I'm looking at 2 different things here. So page 3 of 14, I'll just quickly go through the different options of the intersections of PackingHouse Lane, and then we can just have a general discussion and any questions, I'll try to answer them. So option 1, and looking at this would close off the intersection to Co-op Avenue. The mall entrance would be forced, if you're exiting the mall on the north side, be forced to turn right on PackingHouse Lane and then exit through Airport Street to Similkameen. This option eliminates the dangerous intersection with Co-op and PackingHouse and inching forward and trying to turn left, and then traffic turning left on Co-op into the mall. So it does have some advantages, and it is the second most expensive option. Most of the options are fairly close in price except for option 4. Option 2 is the most expensive option. And again, it's not much more, but it does make that intersection at Co-op and the mall entrance a little safer. There are more crossings for the pedestrians, but it is a more natural way of pedestrians cutting over and back to the mall this way, in this direction, south. Third option is to keep access to and from Co-op. So it basically wouldn't really change much in the existing design right now, except for us adding a sidewalk up along PackingHouse Lane from the development that's located south. So it's keeping the lane open, still adding a sidewalk. This wouldn't be an island, I think it's just painted. But cars would still have to inch forward up to Co-op Avenue, and I know a lot of people don't like doing that, and it's confusing for people out of town or even people that do use it. Option 4 was recommended, so staff looked into that. It's the least expensive option. We could close down PackingHouse Lane. You can create a path, do some landscaping. There would be a little bit of lighting along the path here. But it still does allow access onto Co-op. But because, you know, so it still has, I mean, cars are gonna come out of the mall. If anybody's crossing, they'll have to stop and then they'll have to inch forward again and turn on to Co-op, left or right. A possibility could be, there could be a variation of that, and I was just thinking of it as you could force people to turn left or right onto Co-op, but make the traffic on Co-op not turn left into the mall, and maybe that's a little bit safer. But I don't know how much more safer that option would be. It was brought to my attention that, and I know Councillor Mattis had mentioned before, that most of the trucks for the BC Tree Fruits come in off of Similkameen and enter that way. But there are some trucks that do come this way, and the mall is one of them, where the trucks come down and then they back into the shipping, especially for the no frills, back into the shipping bay. And so there is some usage, and all that would mean is truck traffic, everyone would be forced on Main Street to go to the safer intersection, which is the lighted intersection at Similkameen, turn left on that, turn left on PackingHouse Lane, come around the corner this way. It would, a semi truck would take up both lanes, so when they're coming around the sharper corner, and then they could back into the appropriate spot at Oliver Place Mall. I think we'll just leave it open right now, maybe have a discussion, or if there's any questions, and maybe discuss our next steps, or what we want to do, or if we need to get more information.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. To go back to the budget, I'm not sure whether the Director of Development or the CFO can answer this. The DCC money, is that the full DCC amount, or is that just the roads portion? Roads, water, sewer portion?
I believe it's just the roads portion, because the total DCCs were $225,000.
Okay, so if we were to consider closing it under option 4, then that area would then almost become parkland, and the park DCCs could then be applied, and further DCCs from the park fund could be applied if we wanted to. That was just one thing I wanted to point out, the possibility, because my personal preference is option 4, and always has been. A couple of tweaks that I would personally make on option 4 would be the truck entrance that you're referring to on the tight corner, would be to shift that entrance on, yes.
So they
that
come
when
around
enter
this way.
Instead of having to come all the way around, that they could get into the mall parking lot by shift the entrance into the mall parking lot to the north.
Oh, further this way?
Yes, so that it would be easier for them to access that parking lot. I meant to go by there today and ran out of time to look at the logistics of that. I'm just throwing out as one possibility for an improvement to that design. The second thing I would recommend on that design would be instead of 2 crosswalks at the intersection of Co-op and the shopping mall there, if you wanna go back to that.
Sorry, I was just seeing if we were able to that would even help them depending where the bay is located.
Well, you'd almost have to go physically look at
Yeah.
it, and I never had an opportunity. I'm just throwing it out as a potential help there. You can see how the in the bottom right corner there, where it shows that the entrance is further south.
Yes.
If that were moved north, it would probably assist the trucks coming around that corner to access that parking lot.
So if it was removed back a little further.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, no, that.
Okay.
that's
And
pretty
then the second thing I would do to improve it is your crosswalk situation up at Co-op. Rather than having two crosswalks, would be to have the bike lane also go to the south,
Come down here.
come to there and have one
Yeah.
crosswalk at that point.
Yes, we could do that.
I mean, it would
and
go
I
both
thought about that
directions.
after too.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention that to Steve. We could reroute it here, have one
Single
crosswalk here,
there.
and then continue the sidewalk down to Co-op.
Exactly.
There
You
is with
still have the island and everything to prevent your turns that you don't want.
the only problem with this, like to have the sidewalk tie in here properly. I think there has to be some stairs just because of the steepness of that. I think that's what they told me.
That'll be there either way.
Yeah. Not with some of the other designs where you're closing that right off. Then you can make it work without having stairs.
Redo that whole sort of area there.
Yeah.
It's all landscaping.
There,
That's kind of what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Back to landscaping and the island. But that's something for them to work on.
if I could add another thing, we would have to do a road closure bylaw for closing that off, and that's just some public consultation. But and we would.
Maybe we can include the under veterans at the same time.
The what? The end of
No,
it.
only one at a time.
You can do more than one.
But you're right, and I did mention to Steve, I was looking at, this is the lowest cost option, but when I was looking at their budget breakdown, we would probably have to increase the landscaping, the materials and stuff a bit more than what they have there. You would have to almost bring that up a little bit more.
Again, it becomes virtually parkland, so we could probably.
But you're right, you maybe could do that accountanteering. Yeah, that could help.
That's what we do, we find money.
Moving to councillors online, Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to when we're hooked up to Zoom or GoToMeeting or something and we can see what's happening on the screen. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to picture what suggestions are being made. So I'm just going on what I have in the report in front of me. And from what I have on the report in front of me, at this point I would be in favor of option 1 or 2, leaving the laneway open to one-way traffic and having one-way come in and out of the mall. I think that as far as just general mall traffic goes, people will adjust accordingly, whether that lane is there or not. But at this point in time, personally, I don't think we have enough information as far as who would be directly affected. There was somebody mentioned the loading trucks for No Frills, for example. I couldn't see, I think some suggestions were being made on the board on how they might work around if that lane is closed. But I think that at this point, there are perhaps many unintended consequences with closing the lane that we're just not aware of without that consultation. So I wouldn't be in favor of option 4 right now, without, at the very least, for the consultation of the businesses and those directly affected in the area. So going back then, I would prefer at this point option 1 and 2. And the only difference that I can see in option 1 is the placement of the sidewalk, unless I'm missing something. And if that's the case, then for option one, that's missing that sort of crosswalk that basically crosses the entrance and exits to the parking lot. If we didn't have that, how would people be expected to get from one side to another? Except for just walking through the parking lot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, walking through a mall parking lot, everybody's walking everywhere anyways, but you're right. I mean, it's not the best place, but I think when True was looking at option one, they were trying to come up with an option. It's just one crossing, one pedestrian crossing, and it's just the safest spot and tying into the existing sidewalk the mall has. But you know what, I mean, if we have to tweak things, these were just options, and we're already coming up with some ideas. So whatever option we do go with, it still can be adjusted.
Yeah, and so then if I may ask, is that really the difference between option 1 and 2 is just the location of the crosswalks at the entrance?
Yeah, the crosswalks, yeah, there's not much of a difference. No, there wasn't much of a difference there.
Okay, so crosswalks is just line change. So that's something that's easy enough that if over time you realize the placement is wrong or could perhaps be better than that, probably easy enough to change down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, generally you want to, and I agree, like usually you want to put crosswalks where people are more naturally going to cross.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even been contemplating whether the sidewalk's on the right side or not. You know, if it comes around the mall on the south side, maybe if PackingHouse lane stays there, it may be better suited there. I don't know. All the quantities are going to be approximately the same, so whatever option we decide, we can tweak it.
Okay, so that's where I am at right now. I would prefer to leave going open. I don't think we have enough information to close it. That's fine, fair enough.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. I agree, it's hard for those of us who aren't there to redesign on the fly. However, I'm kind of leaning toward option 1. I think closing the road to a brand new development that's going to have, probably 100 people living there. I'd be hesitant to do that without getting a lot of public input for sure. I think we should either go with one of the first 3 options or just defer this whole thing until we can have some public engagement. God knows when that'll happen. So that we can, if we're going to close that road, it would have to be done with a lot of input from the public, and those are my comments.
Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'm of a similar sentiment. I think the project itself is definitely important. I don't think the intersection is safe the way it is. I've been in favor of option 2. Just because it seems to me that with the extra crosswalk there, it's going to accommodate what I would anticipate be more foot traffic with Oliver Landing going into phases 2 and 3. And same thing, I don't agree with closing the road until we get some feedback from the public. I'd be worried about just unknown consequences for doing that. Those are my comments at this time.
Thank you. I guess it's just a question to the director, as I think public consultation is going to be required here. Option 1 looks like a good option. Option 4 looks like a good option. But I have walked down there and seen as many as 7 semi-trailers parked, 3 of them on the lane just where the other entrance is to the PackingHouse, and 4 of them right along the lane in front of the welfare place and the mall, and all facing like they've come down that lane, that PackingHouse lane, and just understanding if it's just a route that people take and park for the night because they're driving, or they're coming out of the PackingHouse and parking there, or how they're staging in that area. I mean, traffic patterns can be changed though, easily, depending on how many trucks are coming down there. There will be a lot more traffic in there, for sure, once the housing project is built, especially when the future phases are built there. So just, my question would be, is the next step here to get some public engagement and look at proposing a couple options so the public can have some feedback on it?
I guess we would, if you're really considering closing the PackingHouse lane, then we should consult with the public, really, and then giving them a heads up that that intersection is going to change possibly too. That'd be another one for people to get used to.
May I ask one quick question at Petra?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Benjamin.
The options 1, 2, and 3 seem to solve the issue of some better than others, but basically solve the issue that we were trying to deal with in the first place, which is the unsafe intersection coming out of the mall and going onto Co-op Avenue. So aside from a reduced budget, what else would we hope to gain from closing PackingHouse Lane?
I would throw out that we're gaining a couple of things. We're gaining more parkland. We're going with our priority of extending our bike trails. We are diverting semi-traffic from what is going to be a fairly high density area with a lot of people living there, I just heard. And we'll be moving that traffic to a lighted intersection 1 block further south. So when I hear the mayor say there's 7 trucks parked there, that just says to me, do we really want semi-trailers going down those residential streets once we get 100 people living there? If that's what you want to accomplish, then carry on. But if you want more parkland and you want more bike paths, for me at this point, council will choose whatever it wants. I certainly prefer number 4. But I think we should proceed with public hearings regarding closure, and if we don't go there, that's fine. But at least then we've done the work so that if we do decide to go there, that option's available.
Can I ask a question, Councillor?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Grace.
Thank you. So I agree that we need to go to public consultation. I'm wondering if, due to current circumstances, if there's a way to get written feedback on this for now, even if it's just coming from the mall, the co-op, and maybe the MCFC.
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify with respect to when you're doing road closure. You give notice, you don't actually do consultation per se, you just provide notice that you're going to be closing a road. So I want to make that clear, because there is a conversation going on here that we need to do public consultation, which is a little bit different than providing notice.
If I may follow up?
Yep.
Even if we don't have to go to public consultation, I think in this case we should. I mean, I want to hear feedback from the community before we go ahead and close this road. Thank you.
Corporate officer.
Through the worship, through Councillor Grace, we do give notice, as the CAO mentioned, and as part of that, you provide opportunity for persons who consider they are affected by the bylaw to make representations to council.
Director.
Sorry, I just wanted to add too that I think there would be time for consultation, because I haven't heard recently from the developers what their timeline is. I know they wanted to start, in the summer, but I mean, if they best case scenario started just before winter and got the foundation in, well, you're not doing roadworks till next year anyway on this project, right? So I'm not sure what the town's timeline is, but I can't imagine you're going to do the roadworks until you're starting to finish construction, which now puts that into next spring or summer.
Councillor Benjamin, I have a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Benjamin.
I guess it's actually not, thank you, it's not such a question as a comment. I would be leaning towards the same as Councillor Grace, and I think others have mentioned as well. understanding that our obligation is to provide notice if we're going to close a road. Personally, I don't actually feel comfortable voting in favor of closing a road before getting public feedback. And again, that could be really like those that are in the mall, in the at the co-op, and in the Ministry of Children and Families offices. Just because I think that I'm not somebody that works in that area, lives in that area. I use it on occasion, but I think there are perhaps a whole bunch of unintended consequences that we just aren't aware of and wouldn't be aware of until we ask the question. And if we ask the question, we still have the decision then to go one way or the other.
Does someone want to put forward a motion, change the motion that's on the table right now, that hasn't been moved or seconded, to direct staff to take on a public consultation process of some sort? CEO?
I just, if that's what you want to do, it won't be done until after all the COVID-19 stuff is completed, so you're probably not looking at having this project go forward this year.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. Perhaps, just as to maybe work around this a little bit, would it not be feasible to just put, say, options 1 and options 4 on our website and do a little bit of social advertising and ask people to comment on, which of those they would feel better with? I know it's not as good as having people there, but if we put it up there and see what kind of comments we get, that might give us a first step in moving forward.
That is doable.
Did you hear that, Councillor Schwarzenberger, that is doable?
Okay, thank you.
If I could comment as well.
Yes?
That's more along the lines of what I was thinking as well. I don't feel like we need to go to a formal public consultation, but while things are sort of on hold here because of COVID right now anyways, even just, to put something on social media, on the website, and do even just sort of an informal, questionnaire, what do you think, then we can get some of that feedback now and give us an idea how the public would feel about that. I would be in favor of that. Thank you.
Councillor Mattis, first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will then make the motion that staff be directed to gain public feedback regarding options 1 and options 4, and if possible, further feedback regarding the closure of PackingHouse Lane.
And I'll second that.
And if I just put public consultation in there as well, because you never know. We could have a meeting next week.
Is it up for discussion?
Yeah.
Can I add something too?
Director?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable until I've had a better chance to talk to BC Tree Fruits and to them all themselves, and just give them the heads up that we're looking at these. I just wanted to get this to council, look at it, and then do some further consultation with those guys on whether, closing that lane would really affect their operations in any way.
No, I think that'd be great information to get, because the other thing that was bouncing around for me was just understanding the traffic patterns in that area and what impact it would have. I mean, you could ask the public, and if you don't really understand the traffic patterns to go along with how the public feels, you're not going to get the whole picture there. There is a lot of semis in that area, and if it's just being used now because it's the easiest and it's available, that's great, but what's going to happen if it's not there all of a sudden? Because they're not going to be able to park there.
And 100 people living.
And 100, you're not,
Yeah.
exactly, you're going to have 100 people living there, but you're not going to be able to park there anymore either, which is being used as kind of a staging parking lot at this time.
Yeah, and I've noticed, as well as you did, like how many trailers have been parked there in the last couple months, facing south. So they're
Right.
coming from that direction. And I've noticed it more than ever for some reason in the last couple of months. Looking out my window, I can see directly across.
Alrighty. We have a motion that council has moved and seconded. Council directs staff to undertake social media and website consultation and possible public consultation of the PackingHouse Lane road design options 1 and 4, and further regarding the potential closure of PackingHouse Lane. Any further discussion? Then I will call the question and ask if there's anyone opposed. Hearing none, the motion has passed. Moving to item 2.
You want this?
Town of Oliver 100th Anniversary Grant and Aid Request. Defer to the Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This request came from the Parks and Rec Society due to their celebration of the 100th anniversary of the town's birthday celebrations, and they're requesting $5,000. This is going to be for the 2021 years of celebrations, but they are needing the funds in advance as they have quite a few various programs that they have to commit to. So this is why they're bringing this forward now. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Ventimiglia?
Yeah, how did you know I was gonna ask?
Nobody here put up their hand, so you were first
Yeah.
in the rotation.
Oh, okay. So I think this is a great idea, and we obviously need to start planning sooner rather than later, but my question would be, reading the request from Parks and Rec, it doesn't really, like, it talks a bit about having input for heritage tourism and Inkmeet, Desert Cultural Center, but when we kind of really loosely and informally have chatted about this in the past, there was some talk of committees being set up and perhaps spearheaded by Oliver Parks and Rec. And I'm just wondering if anyone in our organization knows what the plan would be, because I would hate for that portion of it to get lost. So a committee involving past members of council, for sure, the Oliver Heritage Society, and then as well perhaps the tourism, et cetera, but an actual formal committee set up.
I think the CEO will be able to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. There is a committee being set up. I am actually on it. And we have.
Thank you.
Pardon?
I said thank you for doing that.
And the Heritage Society is also attached to it. And we are using the same, I do believe we have someone from OTA on there. And we are using the same committee that they currently use for the celebration in August. The Roots and Fruits group. That's the group that we're looking at.
Sorry if I may follow up. So that's a group of volunteers, but actually, so the organizing committee for actual specific, aside from Roots and Fruits, but specific 100th anniversary celebration will be a separate committee?
It will be, yes. Because there's a few of, there's going to be that, and there's another little group that's going to be part of that. We are going to use them, but it is being spearheaded by Parks and Rec. And we're using their event coordinator as well, I do believe. That's where the hours are going into that they're talking about for the funds.
Okay, thank you. So if I just may finish off then, I think that's great. I think Parks and Rec obviously has a great, awesome track record of planning and executing events, and this one wouldn't be any different, I imagine. I do think it's very important, so I don't know if this needs to be in, well, I guess there's no motion aside from giving them money. I don't know how this would need to be noted, but I would just like to make sure that that committee doesn't get lost in the shuffle, and I do think that it should have a member or two of council on it as well. And that's it for me.
Are you volunteering?
Maybe, I'm not sure. I just think that it should, I mean, it's happening down the way a bit, but I think that the 100th anniversary is a pretty big deal, and it's pretty important, and so it definitely should have quite a few hands on deck.
CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to point out that the municipality is celebrating 75 years of being a municipality, of being incorporated. This 100 years is more when the land was surveyed, and the town itself in the past has not been part of the major celebration for the town site itself. It's usually been through the Heritage Society that this has happened. But because, and they've just asked us to participate in it and provide some funding towards it so that it goes forward. So it's usually not an initiative of the actual town council, but if council feels that directors or councillors should be part of it, then that's okay too.
Councillor Maz.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I read through the report here, this request, it's fairly broad strokes, $5,000. It refers to 100 hours of labor, that sort of thing. Are we paying for the labor, or is this for materials? Like, what are we buying with $5,000?
It's the 100 hours towards the event coordinator of helping develop the event, and because there are other people are volunteering to be on the committee, but it's that event coordinator that really pulls everything together.
So would this be Parks and Rec in essence getting $5,000 and providing an event coordinator, or are they hiring someone from outside?
They have an event coordinator, and this would just be, that's part-time for them, and these 100 hours would be put towards, these are extra hours that would be put towards the coordination of the 100th anniversary involved.
But Councilor Mills and I.
CEO.
Thank you. We're also looking at funding our, applying for funds through the Heritage. There's a Heritage Fund that can go towards projects, etc. So we're looking at also applying for those funds.
Did you have some more comments or questions, Councillor Ventimiglia?
I do, yeah. So just in addition to the 100 hours of staff time, the application also says that the funds would potentially go towards supporting the development of 100th anniversary branding materials for use within the community and destination marketing throughout 2021. I'm totally supportive of the application. I don't want it to come across as if I'm not. I just want to make sure that the right people are included on the committee. I mean, from some of the Heritage conversations that the mayor and I have been involved in as well, Heritage has some really cool ideas around perhaps creating like a big centennial sort of leaflet production, like have been used in other communities and have been used here on the 25th, I think, and 50th anniversaries as well. So I'm definitely supportive of the application. I just want to make sure that the committee doesn't get lost in the shuffle, so that we have all of the right components to pull off a great event.
Councillor Maz.
Yeah, my question was more around, did we receive an actual budget with the application where the funds would be spent, as opposed to just a broad brush $5,000? That's all I was asking.
CEO.
There was no actual budget attached to it because it hasn't come to that point. We were looking at approximately how many hours it would take, and also the fact that, as was pointed out, the development of the branding material for everybody in the community to start using during the 100-year anniversary.
Was an actual grant and aid request filled out?
It was this letter that was provided. And that was resolution that was passed by the Parks and Rec Society to get support for the coordination, because they don't have an issue doing the coordination of this. It's just that they don't have the funds in their budget at this point in time, so it was suggested to look at possibly getting a grant and aid.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with the funding either. I'm a little concerned that we're circumventing the process by not filling out applications. This is the second one this year that we received a letter without an actual. We do have a process with an application form that technically should come before council with all of the details and blanks filled in, if I'm correct. Not against the funding, I'm just a little concerned with the process.
Noted.
Does the committee have a meeting scheduled yet? Have you guys had a meeting and have fulfilled your membership on this committee yet?
I do believe we're having a conference meeting coming up Thursday. We're having it by conference call, our first meeting.
Right. I'm wondering if it might be possible or maybe better for the committee to get established first and then come forward with a grant request once you've had a chance to sort of kick around what your plans are, as opposed to possibly asking for money early days, a month or down the road when you've had a chance to identify who's going to be on the committee and maybe come back with a more detailed request.
Sure. We do that, if that's the way council would like to go.
I don't know what other council members feel about that, but I'm just throwing it out there as a thought.
I'll follow up once more if no one else has something to jump in with.
Sure.
I don't know if we're gonna continue going around the table, but it's as well.
I'll wait my turn then.
Councillor Schwarzenberg?
I'm okay with this going forward. I understand that they didn't fill out a form. I'm not sure if our unconditional grant mates necessarily ever get a form, just like the curling team that just sent us a letter, and we gave them the a grant made out of the unconditional portion, and I assume this would come out of the same file, so I'm comfortable with that. Parks and Rec's going to do a good job, I'm sure, and if they have a committee of people from a lot of different walks of life, I'm sure they'll come up with a good program. So I'm comfortable at this point.
Councillor Graves?
Sorry, thank you, Richard. I'm in favor of approving the grant request. I think the centennial is obviously an important community celebration, and especially in light of the current events, I think having reasons to celebrate as a community will be even more so. We need somebody to spearhead this. It's in the budget, and I'm comfortable with approving the grant as it is, and trust that the funds will be used appropriately. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to move the proposed motion?
I'll move the proposed motion that Council Support Parks and Rec Society request a $5,000 grant and aid and allocate these funds to the 2020 grant and aid budget of $9,200.
Is that 9,800 correct?
In that one budget line, yeah, it is. We have a couple.
700, we spent 700.
Yeah, we have another, there's 2 or 3 lines in there. There's 2 lines that we use for unconditional grants. I'd have to pull up the budget, but yeah.
Have a mover, do I have a seconder?
Larry, I'll second.
Seconded, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Okay. Any further discussion, comments?
It's Councillor Benson, I just have one more comment.
Okay.
Following up on what the mayor said just a couple of moments ago about the committee getting together and tossing around some ideas before coming with sort of a more finalized budget, I'm in favor of this $5,000 kind of seed money. as has been said many times, I think Parks and Rec will definitely do a great job. They've got a great track record with events. But I do think that perhaps we might see more requests regarding the celebration, and I don't think that this $5,000 should close the doors to those. Again, kind of the heritage might want work and other groups in our community. So I think this is, like a good indication for Parks to affect the spearhead, but I wouldn't want this to close the door to other opportunities as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. Any further discussion? Questions? Then I will call the question. Is anyone not in favor of the motion? Councillor Mattis?
Yeah, I'm opposed at this point. I think we should get the report.
One opposed, motion carries. Moving to item 3 under business, Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month. I'll refer to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just have to get to the report. The report before you this afternoon is a request from the Cystic Fibrosis. They were advising that the month of May is their Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month. The request before council is to light up Town Hall utilizing our new floodlights to light up for the month of May or just a few days in May, a light blue or a green color. Cystic Fibrosis Month will be promoted throughout Canada and other social media channels nationally and in British Columbia. And if we advise what days that our town hall is lit up, they will come and take a picture and push that out to all their social media channels using the hashtag #LightUp4CF. And I think they also have a geotag that they'll be able to promote that on their channels. The financial requirement will be that Public Works will be required to come and set up the floodlights and turn it on to the light blue or green. Push a button, yeah. So there's 2 options before council: to consider promoting the month of May as Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month, or to decline promoting the month of May for Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month.
Councillor Mattis?
Well, I'm the only one here to be able to read it, so I will move that council promote the month of May for Cystic Fibrosis Awareness Month by lighting up Town Hall in light blue and or green at any time during the month of May.
I'll second.
Seconded, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. Is there anyone not in favor of the motion? Motion passed. Moving to correspondence. Pass it over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to, I was trying to send an email to the mayor, to the CAO. I sent you an email on the Carol James's announcements today in the legislation that may provide some guidance on the next item. So the correspondence report.
Send me an email?
I sent it in an email, yes. The first piece of correspondence is dated March 19th, 2020 from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business regarding support measures for small businesses in light of the COVID issue that's facing us locally in British Columbia and Canada and the globe. The CFIB is asking mayors and councils across British Columbia to take actions to help support small businesses. Number 1 is to waive interest and penalties on unpaid property tax installments for a minimum of 60 days, and waive interest and penalties on unpaid water and wastewater billings for a minimum period of 60 days, and to call on the provincial government to expand the property tax deferral program to provide immediate relief for small businesses and nonprofits. Council has had some initial discussion on that matter. I think the CEO is still reading that, but I could bring it up on my.
I'm reading it. Do you want me to?
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Forward.
I possibly could. Let me just see. Oh, she can barely hear you, Diane. You're gonna have to speak into your, this is Councillor Benjamin.
Oh.
Can you please speak into you? I'm just gonna forward the email to you. Oliver. But basically, the province has announced a number of breaks for small businesses of all sizes. So, what she said, effective immediately, businesses with a payroll over 500,000, wherever that is, can defer their employer health tax payments until September of this year, the end of September. Businesses with payrolls under this threshold are already exempt from that tax. In addition to the employer health tax, the province is extending tax filing and payment deadlines for the provincial sales tax, municipal and regional district tax, tobacco tax, motor fuel tax, and carbon tax until September 30th of 2020. The scheduled April 1st increase to the provincial carbon tax, as well as the new PST registration requirements on e-commerce, and the implementation of PST on sweetened carbonated drinks will be delayed, and their timing will be reviewed by September 30th, 2020. Businesses and light and major industry property classes will see their school tax cut in half. This will provide $500 million in immediate relief for businesses that own their property and allow commercial landlords to immediately pass savings on to their tenants in triple net leases. In the longer term, the recovery plan will dedicate funding to particularly hard-hit parts of the economy, such as the tourism, hospitality, and cultural sectors. The BC government is partnering with business and labor leaders to build an economic stimulus plan. The province has already allocated $1.5 billion for economic recovery.
Thank you. The options before council in this regard, that you may wish to refer the correspondence dated March 19th from the CFIB regarding support messages for small businesses to staff for additional information, or you may wish to consider actions to help support small businesses in Oliver, or you may wish to receive and file.
Councillor Mattis.
Well, I'll open discussion by moving that council receive and file.
Any other thoughts, council? I think what we talked about earlier was property owners and utility bills, and there's still possible discussions around property tax as well when it comes to individuals. We didn't really talk about businesses. It seems like the province is doing, at least moving forward and taking that into consideration with businesses at this point in time. I would agree with receive and file at this point in time, I guess with the caveat that we always have the opportunity to look at this in the future, depending how things go. Those would be my comments.
I will say that I'd second the receive and file. However, I think it's already been decided that we would look at thoughts about utility payments and tax payments a little further down the road, and that will help individuals and small businesses. So I'm comfortable in just receiving and filing this at this time.
Are you going around the table or should I jump in?
Sure.
Hold on.
There was some conversation earlier, but that was a closed item that we were talking about.
Terribly sorry. Never mind.
Councillor Ventimiglia, did you have a comment?
I'm good for now, thanks.
Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Worship. I unfortunately couldn't really hear a word that the corporate officer was saying, but I'm assuming that we're speaking right now to the letter from the CFIB, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So, my comment on this is that the residents and business owners of Oliver need to see what the municipality is doing. If there's people that have lost their jobs already, so if they have a decision to make and it's to pay the utility bill or go buy some groceries right now, I think we need to see that we're at least making a small effort. And I think waiving interest and penalties for 60 days is the least that we could do as a municipality. That would be my comment. Thank you.
CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if you're aware that it was moved and seconded that council receive and file this information.
I did hear that that was moved and seconded, and this is my comment in response to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I will ask the question, who is not in favor of the motion to receive and file?
I am not in favor.
Councillor Grice? Hearing no others, the motion is passed. Over officer.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking at the CEO. The second items before council is the information only items, the correspondence from UBCM regarding the resolution process, an email from the City of New Westminster regarding implementation of the Universal Public National Pharmacare Program, and an email update from UBC Okanagan providing a brief update in response to the university's COVID-19 measures. So the motion is that that the correspondence listed in J2 and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
So moved. Moved, Councillor Manis. Can we get a seconder?
Second.
Second, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those not in favor of the motion? Hearing none, the motion has passed. CEO?
Thank you, Worship. Just before you go into your reports, or if you'd like after your reports, I'd just like to do an update on what the town has been doing with respect to dealing with the COVID and trying to make sure that our essential services are continuing for the community.
If you'd like to do a report.
Well, at some point in time. I don't know if you want me to do it under correspondence or if you'd like me to do it at the very end for public question period.
Let's do it at the end. I think our reports will be fairly quick.
Okay, thank you.
I'll start with Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you. So, I guess I'd like to say thank you to staff and to my fellow councillors for our first distance council meeting over the phone. It's worked fairly well. I don't know what everybody else feels and what it's going to come out at as far as our publication goes. But it seems to be working well. It'll be nice to iron out a few kinks over the next couple of weeks. And I guess I'd also just like to recognize that this has been a strange and different and intense and couple of weeks for most of us, and to also thank our community for responding in a responsible manner and taking care of each other, looking out for each other. What we have had over the past couple of weeks is a lighter schedule than usual. So we did have an inter-council meeting with the city on Friday the 13th, which I was attended. We had an outdoor grounds blessing ceremony for a new primary care clinic this past Tuesday, which is going to be built up beside the current OMB Health Services building. So in addition to serving band members, we learned that this primary care clinic is also going to be serving the populations of Oliver and Sidhu, building on the work that they've already been doing with the offices and the public clinic up there. So it's been huge for the whole region once it's actually built out and fully functioning. Last Thursday, we had regional district. The majority of the board opted to conference call in there as well. And I think I had my first experience conference calling from home while having kids at home, and that was fun. You're all welcome for me not being in the same room as them right now, because they aren't necessarily great partners in running a smooth meeting. And on this past Friday, the mayor and I went to Carl Meadows, who is the Executive Director of Clinical Operations, Acute and Community Services South Okanagan. I'll leave it for the mayor to expand on that conversation. And the only addition that I'd like to add is for those who may be feeling any symptoms of COVID, any respiratory symptoms or flu-like symptoms, this is a plea coming from the local clinic. Please don't go into your doctor's office. Call ahead. Your clinic will give you directions on how to proceed, and that's the safest way to act right now to keep everyone healthy. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. Tuesday, March 10th, I attended Oliver Tourism Association meeting. Friday, March 13th, I attended with the rest of council the inter-council meeting with the town of the Soys. And just in closing, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the people who are keeping our grocery stores, drug stores, and food outlets open. In many, many cases, these people are paid low wages, but they're still going to work so that the rest of us can access the necessities of life. And I think when this is over, we really have to look at these people and maybe try and, on a national level, adjust their wage levels because, they're really doing a great job here. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so we've obviously had an altered meeting schedule. Most meetings have been canceled or postponed. I did on Monday, March 16th, attend all the Parks and Rec Society meeting. Obviously, plans to discuss moving forward dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak. And a lot of what was discussed has already changed in the past week. And it was a tough meeting. That's a society that really wanted to leave some options for the residents of Oliver to have some choices to recreate. And it's just, it's a different situation out there right now for sure. I just want to take a moment for the board residents of Oliver to take a strong directive that's out there to stay at home. That being said, if you are out on a walk and you see friends or neighbors, try not to look at them suspiciously. Make sure you still smile and wave and say hello from a safe distance. And finally, I want to point out that Sage Hill Law has set up the Oliver Buddy system, which can be found at sagehilllaw.com/buddy-system. And this allows those who can't leave the house, as well as those who can make deliveries of groceries, etc., to sign up. They can connect over the phone, and it's something that we can all help each other with. That's been my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. On March 13th was the inter-council meeting with the rest of council, and March 17th was the groundbreaking at the Incoming Health Center. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. March 11th, Heritage Committee meeting at the Oliver Sweetest Joint Council meeting on March 13th. On March 16th, that was a conference call with regional CAOs on the COVID-19 response. March 19th, Incoming Health Center expansion with Councillor Mattis and Councillor Ventimiglia. Also on conference calls that day with Minister Dix and Dr. Bonnie Henry, talking about COVID-19 some more and getting some guidance recommendations. One of the topics there was, and something will probably come down from the province, lots of questions around closing council meetings to the public and if that would be allowed. Lots of people were asking that question. Those meetings are going to continue for at least the next 3 weeks. Met with Carl Meadows, as Councillor Ventimiglia indicated, on the South Okanagan Emergency Department, and a little bit on the COVID response. Really good conversation. I feel like we're definitely creating a good relationship there in the conversations. While there was no solutions, there was a good acknowledgement of some of the challenges that we're having with our South Okanagan Emergency Department, and look forward to continuing those conversations. And was on a conference call again this morning with Minister Farnsworth and Minister Robinson, again about COVID response update. More around not needing to call a local state of emergency, but that there would be several ministerial orders that are forthcoming in the next few days that will guide municipalities on how to deal with people that distancing. I guess that would be it. And the only other thing I would say was FaceTiming with some family down in Vancouver yesterday at 7 p.m. and there was a ton of people that went out on their balconies and started cheering and supporting the healthcare workers. So I did go out myself and there was nobody on my street, but I still stood there and clapped, and maybe we can get all of Oliver clapping at 7 p.m. one of these days. That's my report, thank you. Pass it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have been sending out bulletins to all of staff and council, just letting you know what's been going on in our building. But I do want to just let people know that the office has been closed as of March 18th to the public, but we are still here to do business. We will be reevaluating that closure on April the 6th or earlier. But in the meantime, we can be contacted either by phone or email. We're still doing business with Canada Post. Incoming and outgoing mail will continue as normal. Residents can continue to pay their utility bills online or by check, mail, or dropping off at the town hall. Building permits and development applications will be coordinated by email, which is planning@oliver.ca. Bylaw enforcement services continues by telephone and online forms. Enforcement matters will be assessed prior to conducting an inspection. Currently, there has not been an increase in calls to the town hall, but that may change over time. We have been encouraging all our staff to follow the social distancing protocols. And currently we have 2 staff members who are at home in isolation for 14 days as recommended by the Community Health Nurse and Interior Health Authority. 1 staff member is out of the country and working to get back into Canada. On return, he will also be isolated for 14 days. It's my understanding that a plane could be coming out of that country later this week, so hopefully that individual is on it and he gets back into our community. We currently have 2 staff members working from home due to compromised health matters. Biggest message is if you're sick, please stay home. That's that. I'm also on calls twice a week with the CAOs of our regional district, and we're currently looking. Senior management are currently identifying essential services and non-essential services, and who could be working from home and who needs to be here. Reciprocal agreements with the town of Osoyoos and the RDOS are being considered for essential services, in particular building inspection, water and wastewater. Those are very important services. Well, wastewater and water are definitely important to make sure that those continue on. We have developed an administrative policy for working from home. So there is a process that you have to go through in order to do that, and that's to deal with this area during this COVID-19 period. So again, if you have any questions, you can call our front desk, or and we'll put you through to the department that you need to talk to. That's 250-485-6200. Or there are 3 email addresses that you can also send information into us, which is admin@oliver.ca, finance@oliver.ca, and planning@oliver.ca, and works@oliver.ca. We are working hard to get the irrigation system running. There's a lot of work that has to be done over the next 3 weeks, and there is a lot of pressure on the Public Works Department right now because there are pumps that are not back yet and things are slowing down. So with getting the stuff here, but they are working diligently, and going forward they are ahead, I do believe, with respect to having the irrigation canal actually cleaned, and it's the other work that has to be done. And again, we're working on the plans to make sure that those essential services continue to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next regular meeting of council is April 14th. And acting mayor scheduled for March, April, and May is Councillor Mattis. And I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Mattis, seconder online, please. Councillor Machial.
Are you, is it, everybody done?
I'm waiting